I guess to start, I need to explain that I'm telling this from a hospital room. Yesterday, around 7:30 a.m., my wife and I were in a car accident. I came out with just a few cuts and bruises. My wife Natalie suffered a crushed shoulder, broken collarbone, 3 broken ribs, and a collapsed lung. The doctors expect her to fully recover, but for now, they have her heavily sedated. I wouldn't be telling you here if everything was perfect in our marriage, obviously. I never imagined my wife could be unfaithful in any way. My heart is shattered, and I feel incomplete, like a part of me is missing. The saddest part is that the missing piece is sitting just 3 feet away from me. I had felt us growing apart over the last 3 months, but I couldn't figure out why. We're both 34, and Natalie and I have known each other since we were kids. We started dating in high school and stayed together all through college. She is the only woman I've ever been with physically. Until recently, she could say the same. We got married a year after college and had our first child, Dylan, a year later. 3 years after Dylan was born, our daughter, Chloe, came into our lives. I love my kids more than life itself. If not for them, I'm not sure I'd be here right now. They were not involved in the accident, thank God. They were spending the night at my parents' house. We were supposed to fly down to Florida for a cruise yesterday afternoon, but obviously, that's all canceled now. Natalie decided to go out with her best friend, Sabrina, even though I urged her to come home and not drive around in the snow. She swore she and Sabrina were just going to have a few drinks since they wouldn't see each other for a week. I went to bed and slept like a baby until about 5 a.m. When I got up and looked out the window, I saw that Natalie's car wasn't out front. But we had gotten several more inches of snow. I assumed Natalie and Sabrina got a little too drunk and crashed at her place. I threw some clothes on and got into my SUV. Before I left, I texted Natalie, telling her not to drive because the snow was too deep and that I was coming to get her. The message remained unread. I can't count how many times I've wondered what would have happened if she had read that text. I'd still be living a lie. I'd still have a gut feeling that something was wrong, but I wouldn't be in the utter misery I find myself in now. I arrived at Sabrina's condo and pulled up in front. I looked at my message again, and it still hadn't been read. I hoped Natalie would read it and be ready when I arrived. But I resigned myself to the fact that I'd have to go in and wake her. The front door was unlocked, so I walked in and looked to the TV room to my right. There was nobody passed out on the sofa. Sabrina's bedroom was downstairs, and I didn't want to wake her, so I took the stairs up to her guest room and opened the door. Then my life ended. I remember walking into the room and seeing 2 heads peeking out from the covers. I remember leaning down to pull the comforter toward me. I even remember seeing my wife, Natalie, laying her head on some guy's shirtless chest. The next thing I remember was Sabrina, Natalie, and some half-naked guy I'd never seen trying to pull me off of him. I'd probably be in jail right now if they hadn't, but I honestly don't remember a damn thing. So right or wrong, I don't really feel too bad about that. My wife, on the other hand, well, that changes from minute to minute these days. When I came to my senses, the dude said he'd get his buddy to the hospital. Natalie bawled her eyes out while Sabrina and I screamed at each other. I told her and my wife I was leaving and that she had 5 minutes to be in the car or not bother coming home. She was there in 3. It was really not a good idea to be angry while driving in snow, even with 4-wheel drive. But it was another vehicle that veered into our lane and forced us through a guardrail. That's what caused Natalie's injuries. The car rolled, thank God for airbags, but we lived. The kids don't even know we had a wreck. I haven't called anyone. I probably should have, but this wasn't just a wreck. My life has been wrecked, and I'm trying to gauge the damage before I start bringing others into the situation. I'm numb, and yet I hurt like hell. And not from the wreck. I feel like I don't even know the person laying in that hospital bed. I want to ask her so many damn questions, but I really don't want to know any of the answers. She obviously no longer loves me. No one with a soul could cheat on someone they love. So I have to ask if she ever loved me. And now that she has cheated, would I ever want her to love me again, if that were even possible? I don't know the specifics of when she first cheated, but in my book, the instant she did, our marriage ended. The vows were broken. She ended our marriage, and we are no longer man and wife. I don't need a divorce attorney to nullify my marriage. She's already done that. Therefore, I am no longer under obligation to the vows I gave. A huge part of me wants to just walk out of this room. I want to call her parents, tell them what she did and what happened, and then let them know she is their problem again. After all these years, we said for better or for worse, and I meant it. But we are no longer married. Part of me wants to leave her a note and tell her, too bad worse happened to come after she ended our relationship. The only thing that is keeping me in this damn room is my children. I want to see them so badly right now, but I have some scratches on my face and neck. They'd know something happened if they saw me. As much as I feel my wife has defiled herself and our family, my kids need her. I thought I had a life partner, and as horrible as she ended up being, my children need a mom in their life. There are going to be talks I'm not qualified to have and wouldn't know where to begin. There are going to be injuries that need kisses instead of being told to walk it off. I'm a damn good father, but I can't be a mother too. Please, someone help me. How can I sit here and look over someone who has stabbed me in the back so cruelly? Should I call her parents to come? What do I tell them? I really don't want to be here, especially with her parents. If I don't tell them what she did, they're going to know I'm pissed off. What in God's name do I tell my children? Yeah, I can tell them we were in a wreck, but I'm not the kind to fake emotion. Obviously, my wife does it with ease. But when I loathe someone, it shows in my face. They will know I am angry at their mother. How the hell did my life come to this? I already know I need to see a lawyer. I figured that much out. But how do I handle this? Update. That day, I decided to stay one more night in that hospital room, with Natalie sedated and the lights out. I lay back in the recliner staring at the ceiling, listening to the medical machines. I lay there wondering how the hell my life had reached this point. Part of me felt like I was giving her undeserved mercy just being in the same room, yet part of me still loved her. I didn't want to feel that love. I actually felt weak for having any positive feelings for her. Over and over in my mind, I kept realizing there was no fixing things back to the way they were. It was as if some natural disaster had taken the life we built and destroyed it. I cried. I cried so damn hard. I realized a huge part of my life was over. That was a moment of huge significance in my life. When the nurse came into the room to take blood the next morning, I excused myself. When Natalie woke, she saw me heading out the door and called to me, but I acted like I didn't hear her. I went and got some breakfast. I haven't had much of an appetite since finding out. I tried to kill some time eating and scanning through my phone. There was a text from Sabrina asking where Natalie was that I left on read. I decided at 7 a.m. it was light enough to knock on her parents' door. Her dad was always an early riser. I planned to talk to him first, and if he thought his wife needed to hear it, he could wake her. I saw smoke coming from the wood stove in his workshop out back, so I knocked on the door before entering. He saw the scratches on my neck and the bruise on my cheek. I explained there had been an accident. Natalie had gotten the worst of it, but we needed to talk. I think he assumed I meant about the accident, so he woke my mother-in-law to hear what I had to say. We sat in the kitchen as I explained how, going around a curve, a car in the oncoming lane veered into our lane. Having the heavier vehicle and all-wheel drive, I managed to keep us on the road until we hit the guardrail. The passenger side door caught one of the vertical I-beams mounted on concrete. Even with the side airbags, Natalie hit hard. She sustained lots of injuries, but had told them she was stable and expected to make a full recovery. They both cried, knowing their daughter had suffered but would still be around for them to love. As soon as they insinuated they would be around to help me in any way needed to look after Natalie, I stopped them and explained the wreck wasn't what I had come to tell them. They looked confused as I explained waking up that morning and sending a text to head off in the snow to make sure my wife was okay. I told them about walking in on their daughter and some guy I'd never seen and unconsciously beating him over and over. They were both shocked. Then I told them what room she was in at the hospital and explained I always wanted them to be part of the kids' lives, so I hoped they could remain friendly with me. I told them my dad was looking after the kids at the moment, but I was divorcing their daughter as she had broken our vows and was no longer my wife. I was leaving their place and driving to my dad's to tell the kids about the wreck. I was also going to tell them we were splitting up and wouldn't be together anymore. I was going to tell them their mother is a cheater. I told my former in-laws that while I hated things had to end the way they did, at least I could say I wasn't the one who destroyed our marriage and my life. They tried to tell me I shouldn't be so hasty, that she made a mistake and the usual lame excuses. I just smiled and told them I'd loved having them as in-laws over the years, then walked out. When I got to my dad's, I, of course, had so much I needed to get off my chest. I entered through the kitchen, where I found my dad having a cup of coffee. The only thing he knew was that I was supposed to be on a big boat in the Caribbean. He stood and asked what I was doing there. I just grabbed him, hugged him, and cried like a child. It was the kind of thing where he really wanted to know what was going on, but sensed he needed to let me cry it out before prying. He led me to the den and sat me on the couch to go get my mom. We both urged her to have a cup of coffee first, but she knew if I was there alone that early, I had something bad to tell them. I first explained about Natalie cheating, me catching her, and leaving Sabrina's. Then I explained about the wreck and that it was pretty bad. I told them about Natalie's injuries, and explained I'd let her parents know only an hour before so they could go see her. Both of my parents were stunned. My mom finally asked me what I was going to do now. They both cried when I told them my only remaining option was to divorce Natalie and be the best father I could for my children. As our conversation was winding down, I heard my daughter Chloe squeal, "Daddy!" and come running down the stairs toward me. That woke up my son Dylan, who was also downstairs within a few minutes. I hadn't seen them in so long. I just spent time hugging them, happy to see them. They took a while to notice my scratches. I told them about the wreck and that their mommy was in the hospital but going to be fine. I told them Natalie's parents would eventually pick them up to take them to see their mom, and left it at that. I spent a day playing, talking to, holding, napping with, and laughing with my children. Those two made me want to live again. Until that point, if I'm honest, I was like 50-50 about wanting to go on. But they are worth living for, protecting, and cherishing. My wife's phone was destroyed in the wreck, so nobody had gotten a response for days. Early that night, I started getting texts from my mother-in-law's phone and knew they had to be from Natalie. I ignored them. They continued sporadically off and on through the night. I turned off notifications. The next day, I spoke with 3 law offices about filing for divorce. I can't say I want or even need a legal divorce, but that will divide assets and determine custody of our children. What she does with who is no longer of any concern to me. I've met with 2 lawyers and like the latter one quite a bit. I'll meet with the 3rd-rated lawyer to see if he wows me. If not, I'm going with the 2nd firm's top divorce attorney. Either way, I will have removed 3 top legal sources from her list of candidates, and that's a win in my book. Custody is my primary focus. I'm not going for full custody, and I wouldn't want it if I could get it. They need their mother in their lives, but because she did what she did, she could never again be part of my life. A go-between can drop the kids off on time, whenever they need to be, where they need to be. There's not a reason in this world for me to ever say another word to her. I obviously never knew her, so why would I continue to interact with a stranger? I go back to work next week from what would have been our cruise. I didn't tell a soul at work we didn't go or anything about the wreck. Of course, they will see me driving the rental car and question if I got a new car. I'm not sure if I need to explain things to HR, but I don't want my personal business aired out for all to see. I feel humiliated as it is without news leaking out. Divorce is a necessity sometimes, but it always represents a failure. But I'm done being an anchor for a ship that has already sunk. For those who insisted, rightly, to get checked for STDs, I've had a full screening. It came back clean on everything, thank God. Even that was enough to make me feel like some trenchcoat pervert when I did nothing wrong. I assume by this time Natalie has left the hospital. Her parents did not even attempt to bring her to the house. They couldn't have contacted me anyway due to Natalie's constant texts I wasn't reading. As soon as I can get divorce papers filed and her served, I can be done with the biggest mistake of my life. Her actions invalidated all of that time. If I had to do it over again, I would now not do it again. I would choose a life with someone else, anyone else who would actually be faithful and loyal. Her greatest asset is what she intentionally threw away. The ability to be trusted, from having someone to call your own to being all alone. I know all of that was a lie, and I meant nothing to her. People will swoon over a beautiful lie and repel an ugly truth. I'm not one of those people. Outside of a person literally putting a gun to your head, there's no excuse to cheat. Beyond that, when you have made a life bond you have sworn to uphold, making the decision to ruin it for the other person makes you vile. I wish to God I'd never met her and had taken a chance on someone, anyone else. She had no right to give me a life and then take it all from me against my will. The man I was before her betrayal will never exist again. The woman she was never existed, and the life I had is now a facade in ruins nobody wants to live in. Update. Not only am I not sure where to begin, I'm not even sure what to say when I do. I guess the first thing is to tell everyone I did manage to get a very good lawyer. Her firm, in general, is rated the highest for representing men in divorce cases in my area. Instead of passing my case off to someone else on the legal team, she took on my case as her own. Everyone at the firm has been kind and supportive. I can tell they don't just care about getting their retainer and payoff. Nadia, my lawyer, has done everything she can to help me with my well-being and sanity. After agreeing to take my case, we went over the usual forms I needed to fill out. I listed property and all bank account info, as well as ballpark estimates of what Natalie and I make income-wise. After explaining about the wreck and what I saw just before it happened, she asked if I had an STD panel. I explained that I had and everything had come back clean. She then asked if I had documented the infidelity with pictures or video. I told her I hadn't been thinking rationally enough at the moment to do that. She phoned a private investigator her firm uses and set up a meeting between him and me the next day. I live in an at-fault state, so while I knew Natalie was unfaithful, I needed actual evidence for the divorce to go my way. We set up one of her staff to be the go-between for me and Natalie's dad as far as communication goes and to arrange drop-offs. I got her aide to go ahead and notify my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law that my ex could have the kids that upcoming weekend and following week. Nadia then asked if I had arranged therapy for me and my children. I explained I was due to have my first therapy appointment that week, but as the children had yet to be told anything, I was holding off on that. She told me as soon as I felt they were in need of any professional attention to let her know, and she had several therapists she could recommend. She expressed what seemed to be sincere condolences that I was having to go through all I have and will. I tend to dislike lawyers, but I do think I might have found one with an actual soul. She gave me a list of things to collect and do before our next meeting. Many of the instructions were identical to the advice users, so when she told me to drop by the drugstore to get 2 DNA kits, I thought nothing of it. I knew it was standard protocol. When I got home with the kids that night, I did the cheek swabs for me and them. I sealed everything up and mailed the kits off after taking the kids to school the next morning. 2 days later was Friday, and the go-between dropped the kids off with their grandfather for the weekend. That morning, I went to work. I was just coming back from lunch when I got an email notification from my personal account. I could see it was 2 emails from the lab, so I waited to get to my computer to view them at my desk. I opened the first email and clicked the link. The result said my son, Dylan, is in fact my son. I opened the other email and clicked the link. I read what it said. I read what it said again. I couldn't really say anything. I just started shaking my head. I knew I had to get out of the office before breaking down, but I managed to do screenshots of both results and email them to myself as photo files. I went to my car and began bawling as the realization my daughter, Chloe, was in fact not my daughter set in. I can't imagine having an arm cut off would hurt much more than losing a daughter. It honestly felt like my soul had been taken from me. I don't know any other way to describe it. I didn't know who to call. I just sat there crying and wishing like hell I could wake up from my nightmare. I downloaded the 2 files from my email account and texted the pics to my lawyer. Within 20 seconds, Nadia called, asking where I was. Work was all I could manage to say. She told me to stay there, and someone from the firm would be there in a few minutes. I ended the call and opened the door. I began to vomit uncontrollably until I was dry heaving. By the time I managed to stop puking and feeling dizzy, one of the paralegals arrived to pick me up. She took me to the firm, and as soon as Nadia had finished with a client, they ushered me into her office. The first thing she told me was that sometimes the tests come back wrong. She said she understood I was upset and had every right to be, but she urged me we needed to test Chloe and me again in a local lab to ensure nothing gets contaminated. I couldn't believe what was happening. Even after catching Natalie cheating, I just assumed the DNA test on the kids was a formality. I would never have thought my wife would ever be unfaithful, but imagining she was capable of having some other man's baby? If true, who the hell did I marry? I couldn't even confront Natalie if I wanted to. I didn't have concrete proof yet. I couldn't imagine if the results confirmed what we highly suspected, how she and I would ever have that conversation. One of the ladies in the office at the firm had a blood pressure cuff and checked mine to make sure it wasn't at dangerous levels. It was elevated, and I did feel like I was close to a panic attack. Yet I was numb and in shock at the same time. I wondered what was next. I struggled to grasp my little girl might have never been my little girl. At that moment, I was so glad the kids were staying with their mom. I started wondering if both tests could be wrong and maybe Dylan wasn't my son. I knew I couldn't wait 2 days to know the truth, so the go-between set up a time she could pick Chloe up the next day for a few hours and take her back to Natalie's parents. We did the test in a sterile environment and by trained medical staff. There was no mix-up. I am not Chloe's father. It still took a day to get results, and she was back with her mom by the time I got them, but I cried even harder the second time. I'm so glad Chloe wasn't there to witness it. I sent the results to my lawyer, and she called to check on me. She urged me to seek out family and not go through things alone. I got into my car and drove to my dad's, crying the whole way. When I got there and saw my mom, she knew something was wrong, but couldn't get it out of me. Finally, I just managed to utter, "Chloe is not my daughter." Mom asked me, "What?" But she knew she heard correctly, and I was incapable of repeating it. After about 30 seconds of silence, other than me weeping uncontrollably, she stood and got her cell phone. She called my dad and told him to hurry home but to please be very careful, that I had bad news. I could tell my dad wanted at least a hint at what it could be so bad, but she just urged him to be safe and get home as soon as he could. He arrived in about 20 minutes, and we all just had a long cry for hours. I'd console my dad, he'd console my mom, they'd console me, but we were all inconsolable. They, of course, asked me about Dylan, and I assured them he was mine. They both expressed relief, and then felt badly for being relieved to only be losing one grandchild. They asked me what I was going to do. I told them I didn't know. The only thing that was certain for me at the moment was that Chloe would never want for anything she needed, and most things she wanted. I didn't even care about potential required child support at the moment. She was going to be taken care of. As horrible as I was feeling for myself, I felt even worse for Chloe, being totally innocent. Did I want custody of her? Could I get custody of Chloe even if I wanted it? I began to wonder if Natalie knew or suspected. I suddenly wanted some damn answers. I met with Nadia after work Monday, and she told me she'd met with the private detective hired to follow Natalie. Due to the wreck, she hadn't been out of the house to cheat anymore, so I wasn't surprised he didn't have recent evidence. But one of the things Nadia had me bring was Natalie's old cell phone from out of a drawer at home. He was able to get in and access nearly every app, as if he were on her destroyed phone. He found nudes sent and received to and from various guys, tons of messages, and sexting with enough admission of guilt in them to sway any judge. I was asked if I wanted to see any of the pictures or read the texts. I declined. Nadia and I did need to plan how I was going to confront Natalie about Chloe. She thought it best to do it in her office if Natalie could be talked into it. She called Natalie's mom's cell in front of me. I heard Natalie's voice for the first time since I left the hospital. Nadia got straight to the point and told her she needed to meet with me to explain a few things. My ex declared she'd been waiting and wanting to talk. She was asked if her lawyer could be contacted. Natalie said she didn't have one, but was willing to come the next afternoon to talk. It was all I could do to get through that. The next day I went to work trying to keep it together and pretend to be productive. I was barely able to keep lunch down. I left at 3 and headed to the firm feeling nauseous. I arrived first intentionally, wanting her to be forced to enter and sit away from the door, unable to try and approach me. I was scrolling through pictures of our so-called perfect family when she came in. She needed assistance walking and was still in 2 casts from the wreck. I didn't have to worry about her trying for a hug. I thought she might be playing it up for sympathy, but we did have a bad wreck. I finally wanted her to just sit the hell down so I could ask her to explain herself. Once we were all seated, water was offered, and the meeting began. My lawyer started by asking Natalie if she minded us recording the meeting. She was fine with it. As soon as we started recording, my soon-to-be ex-wife began to try and apologize. I bluntly interrupted her and asked her point-blank how many men she had cheated on me with, and when did it start. There were enough confirmed hookups from the private investigator to know the guy I caught her with wasn't the first by a mile. She didn't know what we knew, of course, and I guess to reduce the severity of the incident before the wreck, her plan was to only admit to what she knew we knew. I asked her again, rough estimate, how many men had she slept with since our son was born. Giving that specific time frame seemed to give her a minute's pause. but she kept trying to act clueless. She still thought it was all a game at that point, and I was losing my cool. Nadia put her hand on my shoulder and gently pushed me back away from the table. She looked at Natalie and asked if I was a good father. Natalie quickly gave me a glowing review, saying she couldn't ask for a better father to raise her children. I wanted to stand and flip the table at the way she stated her children. Nadia then asked her if the other father of her child was going to be a good dad too. As Natalie was asking what other father she was talking about, my counsel slid the paternity results for Chloe across the table. As much as I have hated what my life has become since discovering her cheating, I needed to be there to see her reaction in person. She was obviously shocked to know Chloe wasn't mine and tried to hit me with the whole, "You're the father who has raised her," but I had to shut that down. I asked her who Chloe's father is. She looked down with a hint of shame, and I thought she might be protecting someone when she said she didn't know for sure who Chloe's father is. Natalie saw me truly break down in tears for the first time. I just couldn't take it anymore and lost it. Natalie was crying but asked to try and explain. She reminded me about the postpartum depression she went through after Dylan was born. I did my best to be as sympathetic as I could at the time. I can say with certainty I spent every moment I could looking after my son so she could have time to herself. There were days she was so depressed she couldn't even get out of bed, and I looked after all of us. But I loved doing it. I loved doing it for the family I thought I had. I remembered I had actually been foolish enough to think making it through had made our relationship stronger. Nope, she didn't blame it on Sabrina. When she first got married, she would go on a few girls' nights out, and I was relieved, if not grateful. They'd been best friends for years, but hadn't seen much of each other during the pregnancy. Natalie said she got really drunk the second time they went out, and she let some guy feel her up while she gave him head. She said she felt guilty about it for a while, for months. But then she began to resent not getting to be young and free to be with whomever she chose. She told us she started hooking up with guys the nights she would go out with Sabrina. Until the night before the wreck, she'd never not come home or come home late. Over the years, she'd claimed she didn't want to develop feelings for any of the guys. She claimed she always used protection and never slept with the same guy more than 3 times. She said she just wanted sex. I was dumbfounded. Finding out your wife is a filthy liar tends to do that. It was like learning your life was a reality show you didn't ask to be in. I wanted to yell at her, but I was too busy calculating how many men she possibly cheated on me with over a period of years. Nadia asked her if she had any idea who Chloe's father might be, but she swore she always assumed she was mine. My lawyer pointed out that obviously something happened and suggested maybe a condom broke. When my wife confessed that it did happen a few times with a few guys, I lost my cool. I asked her who in the hell she was because I didn't know the person telling me such horrible things, like she was telling me to pass the salt. I asked her when she started hating me and why. I asked what I had ever done to warrant being treated like she did. How could she do this to her daughter? I raged. She took it, knowing it was all true. After what she just told me and what I expressed about how I feel about her, divorce is a given. What was a marriage had become scorched earth. The only thing left to do was total up the casualties. I've lost a wife and a daughter, that's 2. A wife lost a husband, that's 3. A daughter lost a father, and a brother had his sister become a half. Then you get into grandparents and in-laws. Natalie essentially destroyed 2 entire families. Her parents will not be okay with what she was doing, and I swear by all that's holy, I will let them see all the evidence the private investigator finds. She admitted to meeting with men from dating apps with Sabrina and using girl time as a time to hook up. She claimed she never meant to hurt me. She swore she had no idea Chloe isn't mine. I actually believe her because I had no idea either. But DNA doesn't lie. I asked why she didn't just divorce me. She came straight out and said because she didn't want to lose the security I gave her. She cried. All of it was said through tears, but I know my expression was just of scorn. I was disgusted at the person who sat across from me. I feel used, humiliated, emasculated. I feel defeated. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons she came to talk without a lawyer is due to the fact I own everything. She doesn't have much to lose outside of a small 401k and my assets I entered the marriage with by inheriting my grandfather's estate when I was 14. The woman I call Mom is not my biological mother. My mother died when I was 2 from a rare, fast-spreading cancer. My dad remarried the woman I called Mom when I was 4. I have known my entire life she wasn't my biological mother, and I wasn't her biological son. I learned later she couldn't have children, and raising me helped her experience that. When my biological mother's dad died, what was left to her went to me as her heir, but I couldn't touch it until I was 21. I studied hard and went to school, but I don't have to work. She knows I will mop the floor with her in the divorce, and she won't be getting anything close to half. She has a job. She isn't able to work at the moment with her injuries, but she has a job. Part of me wants to punish her, and the other part of me wants to be done with her. Natalie was obviously medicated for pain. Maybe that's why she was being so blunt, but her words just cut me deep as my imagination made them even worse. I asked if she felt any shame. She claimed she did. I asked how the hell we were going to find out who Chloe's father actually is. My soon-to-be ex-wife started with the "I already know who the father is" BS. I was not in the mood for some philosophical discussion about what constitutes being a father. Whoever Chloe's father actually is deserves to know, and she needs to know about his family for health reasons. The evidence the private investigator had found didn't stretch back to before Chloe was born. I asked her if she could find any of these men or had saved their numbers. She had the audacity to say the point of losing their numbers was to never see them again. My God, how did I not see that logic? I told her she might have wanted to keep his number to let him know he had a child on the way, or she got an STD. I want my name off of Chloe's birth certificate. DNA proves she is her mother's child and not mine. As stated, I will support her financially of my own free will long past her turning 18. She will not want for anything. As for my son in custody, I'm truly not sure what to do. Before the paternity test, I was strongly going for a 90-10 arrangement, giving my ex-wife custody one weekend a month and certain holidays. Now that Chloe is not mine, I don't feel right about pursuing custody for her, even if I could get it. As Dylan is in fact her brother, I'll be at half. I don't want to take him from her too. I don't want either of them to suffer, but I haven't seen Chloe since the test results, and I can't let her see me break down because of them. God knows how much her therapy is going to cost me, but I will have to pay for it. There's no way to know if her real dad can afford it. My own therapy will be enough to pay for some shrink's new beach house. Driving home after the meeting, a huge part of me just wanted to end it all. It seemed like the most difficult but beneficial solution for everyone but me. Both families could go on pretending about paternity. My ex could go around openly while spending my grandfather's money, and the kids wouldn't have to deal with any broken marriage or failed relationships. But by the time I got home, I said fuck that. Nadia is drafting up divorce papers and legal paperwork to have me declared not Chloe's father. That will make things take much longer, but I do not want any legal grounds that can force me to interact, pay for, or deal with offspring that are not mine. The legal team is doing research for ways to find out who Chloe's father is. Many of the ancestry sites suggest potential relatives when results come back. Right now, that's our first plan of action. Even if the results don't come back pointing to a certain individual, they might point to a brother, cousin, or another relative. Whoever the guy is, he may not be ready to accept a child he didn't know about. It could cause some anxiety in his life, but I doubt he will feel nearly the terror I felt losing my daughter forever because she never existed. Everything is just so screwed up at the moment. Nothing is stable. Chaos is a daily burden at this point. The kids come back to the house Sunday afternoon. I've never wanted to not see them before, but I know many inevitabilities will happen that I cannot be prepared for. When she sees me and wants to hug her daddy, I'm not even sure how I'll react. Hug her and cry like a baby knowing she has never been truly mine? Tell her I'm not the person she's looking for. I don't have it in me to be mean to her, but my heart is broken. There's nobody to take this out on. Not even Natalie, because nothing I could do outside of murder would equal the betrayal she has done to me. That scale will never be balanced. She used me and spit me out. She deserves to rot in hell for her promiscuous, lying ways. I'm destroyed, and everything I used to love is too. I will win the divorce. Nadia and her team will make it the most lopsided division of assets in the history of divorce. But Natalie reduced or removed the value of so much for me, it feels like she's already won again. To hell with her. I'm left with a son she will try and use against me and manipulate. Some people really are so horrible, they deserve to be put down like an animal. I made the stupid decision to have a child with one. I just know now I'm not the only stupid one. I'm getting flack about my role in Chloe's life going forward and how I treat her. Everybody has a damn opinion. The fact is, It will be impossible to do what's best for me and best for the kids. And just as this has all damaged me beyond repair, it will damage the kids. But I have people saying I want to damage Chloe just to hurt Natalie. I actually had someone tell me that I'm a misogynist because if my son hadn't been mine, I would have just accepted it. To that I say it is untrue, and even more untrue. People are telling me to not tell her now, and that makes sense in many ways. But if we manage to find Chloe's father, who do they tell her that guy is? I could let her go on thinking I'm her dad for the rest of her life, but that's a lie that could hurt her even more down the road. Everyone has their opinions, but they aren't living my life. They aren't dealing with this betrayal. I have to make decisions based on what I think is best for me and the kids, even if it means others will judge me for it. But there is some guy out there who has a kid and doesn't know it. Sure, he may want no part of her life, but if he does, he should be involved in her formative years. He should get to know her, and she should get to know him and his family. He might be the nicest guy in the world and would make a great dad. Everyone wants to do what is best for Chloe, but opinions on what is truly best for Chloe vary widely because nobody knows how this will turn out, and nobody can see into the future. I want my name off her birth certificate for legal reasons, but people are considering me cold and heartless for that. She isn't my daughter. That is a scientific fact that cannot be debated. It doesn't matter one iota how Chloe feels about me or how I feel about her. Feelings change every day. That's why we use science. I wish to God the science was wrong. I can feel I impregnated Natalie twice, but nope, I was just first in line. Science took what I believed and felt and shattered it all into 1,000 pieces. I don't like it, but facts are just facts. Sunday, when I see Chloe again, I know I'm going to lose my crap. I can be stoic and not show any emotion around Natalie, but not Chloe. I'm going to cry. She's going to wonder why I'm crying. I can't tell her. That's going to make her feel worse. Dylan is going to wonder why I'm crying. I won't be able to let him know anything either. So there I'll be, trying to adult and be a parent with 2 kids, crying for no reason. But people are concerned how I'll treat Chloe. The truth is, I don't know and won't know how I will treat her until it happens. All I know is I'm not going into that reunion with hate toward Chloe or wishing any harm on her beautiful little head. But it may overwhelm me. It may make me imagine the sheer number of guys Natalie cheated with. It may cause me to be catatonic. But the people on my butt thinking I'm going to see her again and show her cruelty are just insane. Final update. The go-between from the law firm texted me at 3 p.m. Sunday to let me know she had the kids securely in the car with their belongings and was on her way to the house. I doubt any text message in history has been as dreaded for anyone as that one was for me. What made it all the more tragic was the fact that weeks before, I would have smiled and anxiously awaited the text. Suddenly, a reunion I would have been yearning for was something I dreaded. I had no plans to mention divorce, paternity, or any issues with the kids. As much as I tried to prepare myself, I knew I wasn't in the state of mind to bring any of that up. My goal was for things to go as normally as they could, like the other times they stayed with grandparents while Natalie and I were on vacation. That's what I wanted. I knew reality was going to be something completely different and had little control over it. Jessica, the intern from the firm, pulled into the driveway. I watched them pull up from the front bay window. I walked outside and down the steps as the car came to a stop. I was smiling as I approached the passenger side of Jessica's car. As soon as I saw Chloe in her car seat beaming a huge smile at me, I started crying. Oh, I was still smiling. You couldn't have knocked that damn smile off me with a 2x4. I just hoped if I maintained a smile, it might convince the kids and myself everything was okay. I wish I'd had a plan B. As soon as I could get her out of the car seat, Dylan was by my side, and I grabbed him and Chloe and just hugged them. I told them I missed them. That was really all I could manage to say. I just kept crying. People can hate me all they want to. God knows I've gotten some hate-filled messages privately and publicly, but it all felt different. It did not feel the same as the day I hugged my children goodbye. I want to say it did just to get the people who think I'm a loathsome wretch off my back. Maybe part of the loss I was feeling was over the family unit we all used to know being destroyed. My heart was just flat out broken. Seeing them and knowing she isn't mine just broke my heart all over again. That is what my life has become. Every single damn day, it feels like there is a new heartbreak. I learn more of the extremes of Natalie's cheating escapades. I discover pain I can't shield the kids from. I'm reminded of the past bonds, and know they were all founded on lies. I keep backing away from the volcanic epicenter of chaos that started when I caught Natalie cheating, but I keep getting blasted with stray boulders of betrayal daily, learning how much I've been deceived. Jessica was a saint helping me get them into the house. I grabbed all of their belongings like a pack mule, and she closed the doors and trunk. As soon as I placed their bags down on the floor, I turned to see Chloe looking up at me. She didn't say anything. She just looked up at me with those eyes like she knew I was the one that needed the hug. I squatted down, and she walked into my arms and wrapped her little arms around me as tightly as she knew how. That child broke me. I wanted to be strong, but no kid should hear a parent cry like that. Everyone keeps insisting I do the things that damage them the least. That's great, even logical. But what if everything damages them? What if there's no way to keep the damage from happening? Allowing her to see a source of strength and security destroyed has to be damaging her. How could it not? If I abandoned her, it would destroy her. Yet by staying in her life, I am damaging her as well. A 6-year-old shouldn't have to console a grown damn man, especially for something that wasn't her fault. My soul was seething with rage toward Natalie at that moment, but the little girl she lied and told me was mine just showed me love the only way she knew how, and kept hugging me. The indisputable truth of the matter, the epiphany I had at that moment, was that she and I are both victims. As the adult, it's my responsibility to navigate this nightmare and protect her as much as I can. I'm supposed to be able to maintain and handle it better. She doesn't even know she's been victimized yet. Just as if she and I were the only survivors of a plane crash, we survived, but it's going to leave scars on our souls. But as the survivors, we need to stick together. We need to be there for each other because we're going through the same damn thing. Yes, very different perspectives. But at that moment, I was feeling the loss, and yet sparing her much of the pain by taking it upon myself. I've been looking at this as Natalie taking my daughter from me, but it is just as true to say Natalie took her father from her. The villain in this damn story is Natalie. I'm done feeling like I should feel guilt for anything I feel right now. There is no paternity handbook that I'm aware of. The proper way to react when you find out the daughter you raised was never yours? Get the hell out of here with that crap. Nobody can tell me how the hell I should feel or react. The only analogy I can give is children switched at birth. That's a couple facing that together. They were both deceived. They both get to find out the offspring they were told was their flesh and blood was really the sperm and ovum from another couple. Unless you've endured that or the same thing I am in right now, you can't grasp how it feels. After about half an hour, I managed to get my crap together. Jessica left after getting a hug from all three of us. I handed her a small envelope with $500 inside and told her it was for gas. I knew she drives an electric vehicle, and she knew it wasn't for gas. I carried Chloe around in my arms as Dylan showed me some of the things he'd helped make with his grandfather. Chloe just kept her arms around my neck, making sure I knew she'd helped stain some of the wood. I went into my standard I don't believe you game. Dylan joined in, and that devolved into a tickle session first for Chloe, then Dylan. I cannot convey how wonderful, and at the same time heartbreaking it was to hear Chloe's squeals and laughter. Seeing Dylan happy and laughing was a joy for my broken soul, because I knew the future held little to none of what we were at that moment enjoying. They teamed up to wrestle me. I like seeing them work together, even if it was against me. Father or not, by the time she's old enough to date, I'll have her able to say no with feeling. I put on some music. Ever since she was a baby, Chloe has loved music. I have danced with her from the first week she was born up until the previous month. I'm sure I look goofy. I don't care. I have fun, and she loves acting as silly as me. I got Uber Eats to bring takeout for dinner. We aren't Asian, but we sure as hell ate like it. Dylan can throw down some lo mein for a 10-year-old. And for whatever reason, Chloe loves crab rangoon. I didn't eat much. My appetite has taken care of any weight loss issues I had. I just enjoyed getting to have dinner with them again. They both had school today, so I got them bathed, pajama-ed, and ready for bed. Dylan likes to read a book as he's settling down. I gave him a hug, told him I loved him, and said I'd see him in the morning. I got Chloe tucked into bed and read her a storybook while pointing out things in the artwork. I had her about ready to nod off, and I felt myself welling up with tears. I kissed Chloe on her head and told her, I love you. for the first time since finding out. Call me the biggest a-hole on the planet. I don't care. But saying it was like allowing myself to admit it. Everything in my life has been a struggle in recent days to figure out what is real and what isn't real. My love for Chloe is real. I love her. I do feel different, right or wrong, but I love her. I went from not wanting to take anything away from her to continuing to want to give. It's a huge difference. But anyway, I was sort of waiting for Chloe to tell me she loves me. I mean, I know she does without her saying it. Instead, she took the moment to tell me, "Mommy loves you." I knew what she said. I made a point not to snap at her and be as sweet as I could possibly be when I asked her, "Chloe, why did you tell me that?" She said, "Mommy told." I very sweetly asked, "Did Mommy just say that, or did Mommy tell you to tell me that?" It seemed my soon-to-be ex-wife had to explain why I hadn't been to visit, wouldn't be coming over, and she wouldn't be coming home with them. She actually told the kids her parents' house was her new home, which I was kind of glad about. But the "I love yous" I still had to get to the bottom of. I pried some more. Then Dylan came into the room. He revealed their mom had told him she wouldn't be coming home because I didn't love her anymore. What the fuck was I supposed to say to that? Yep, it's all on me. I just fell out of love with your mom. Blame me was not happening. I called our usual sitter. I asked if there was any way she could come over for a few hours to look after the kids. Since they were already in bed, that meant she could study while getting paid. She agreed. I got into the car and made a beeline for my in-laws' house. I didn't bother calling first. When I got there, I knocked on the front door and asked to see Natalie. Her mom led me to her childhood room, where she was recuperating from her injuries. I turned to her mom and placed my hand on the doorknob before telling her Natalie and I needed to chat. She sensed I was a little on the pissed-off side, so she scurried out of the blast radius. As soon as the door was closed, I just asked who the fuck she thought she was trying to pin our split on the fact I could never love her again. She said it was the truth. I told her perhaps, but the reason I could never love her again is the fact she is lying, deceitful, worthless, and promiscuous. Lying to deflect blame on her little role in everything. She then said she's already tried to apologize, but I didn't want to hear it. I exploded. I asked her what the effing good-a-damn apology was going to do. It wasn't going to undo the damage, and it wasn't going to keep the damage from happening. And in spite of all that, I didn't believe she was truly sorry for what she'd done. I asked her how she could manipulate two innocent children to make me look like the bad guy. If she had any guilt, I asked her at what point I became the bad guy that destroyed our marriage. Without missing a beat, she told me, "When you didn't give me a second chance." Not going to lie, I stopped her and asked how much pain medication she was taking and if she was drinking alcohol with it. That was the only logical way I could see her thinking a worthless liar deserves a second chance, mercy, or to be treated with dignity and respect. Nope, she lost all of that by her own actions. Again, I don't even know who my wife is anymore. It's like she's been possessed by the ghost of Caligula or Charlie Sheen. My beautiful, virtuous wife was replaced by a soulless hookup harlot, and it's a miracle of God himself my junk hasn't rotted off due to her disgusting actions. I asked her if she felt justified destroying everything in her life for sex. She said it wasn't just for sex. I reminded her she claimed to want no emotional involvement. She said much of it, especially at first, was about validation. She said she liked being chased. She got pissed when I asked how she could even consider herself chaste, but she can go get bent. Actions affect how you are perceived for the rest of your days. She can deal with it. Natalie and I ended up talking for several hours. When she went through the depression after having Dylan, she even told me I had been the best supportive husband she could have asked for. So I had to ask why she betrayed me so cruelly. She said despite such a happy event in her life, there was a part of her so anxiety-ridden she actually wanted to die. She said she felt love in her heart for me and for Dylan, but for some reason she couldn't understand. She felt depressed and dead inside. She stayed out of work for an additional 6 months due to her issues. I got her the best therapists and doctors money could buy. She admits as much, and she said even that started making her feel guilty, feeling she was letting me down. I was carrying us. She said she felt overwhelmed, even though she knew she wasn't bearing any of the burden. She said she started to doubt if she ever should have become a mother despite always wanting to be a mom. She withdrew from friends in person and via internet text. She told me every day she loved me and apologized. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. I just wanted her to get better. Maybe she was apologizing for what she was about to do. When Sabrina came to the house unannounced that first day, I was so glad to see her. I knew Sabrina was ballsy enough to not be pushed away, but kind enough to get Natalie to open up. It still took months before anything that could be considered a night on the town occurred. Just getting Natalie to go to Starbucks was a victory at the time. There are a ton of guys thinking I'm the biggest schlep on earth, letting my wife go to bars or clubs with a single girlfriend. 99% of the time, you would be 100% correct, and I should have put a stop to it much sooner. But at that moment in our lives, after all the sadness and isolation, getting her out and about seemed to cheer her up even after just the first time. She tried to explain she'd suddenly become a wife and mother in a period of 2 years. She said seeing how thirsty men were for her, even if it was just for sex, boosted her ego. She claimed the first incident wouldn't have happened if she hadn't been so drunk. But it happened willingly. Once the knob was slobbed, she knew I'd never touch her again if I knew. She knew she'd lose everything because she came into the marriage with nothing. I asked her if she ever thought I'd find out about her cheating, or how I'd react if I did. She said she knew it would destroy me. She claimed she felt horrible about it. I asked the obvious question, why continue to cheat? She claimed as soon as she sobered up after cheating, she felt guilt, shame, and regret. I did remember her being really sad for a week after going out the first time. Sabrina came over and the two of them talked for hours alone. From that point forward, for months, I had the old Natalie back. She revealed she told Sabrina that day she felt unworthy of me because of what she did. She knew if I found out, we were done. I would go after Dylan. She claimed she decided to take it to the grave and try to be the best wife she could be in every way to make it up to me. Red flag, yeah. Now think I'm a fool all you wish. But we had a baby to look after, and I had been doing 95% of the caregiving overnight. I got my wife back. At the time, I would have been stark raving mad to think that was a red flag. It was a damn miracle at the time. Within 2 weeks, I was back working part-time, then full-time once Natalie was fine as a stay-at-home mom. Looking back, the time just before and just after Dylan was a year old had been some of the happiest of our lives, at least for me. To find out it was all due to her trying to make up for blowing a stranger in his car forever altered those happy memories. I asked why she cheated again if I just wasn't good enough for her. I had always thought we had a great sex life. Aside from her depressed period, she always acted like she enjoyed sex with me. She claimed the longer she went keeping the secret, the worse she felt about herself. But unlike before Dylan was born, she couldn't let on to me how she felt. She knew I'd want to know why she was sad, to comfort her, but she couldn't tell me. She claimed the internal struggle of keeping the secret and living the lie of the facade of happiness was tearing her apart. She reminded me of the reunion of my bio-mom's family out of state. I took Dylan with me to introduce him to her family for the first time. Natalie canceled at the last minute, claiming she was ill. I couldn't have stopped her from cheating on me at that moment. That was already done. But I might have kept her from heading down a road that would deceive me for 6 years, making me believe something I cherished was never mine. I wasn't blaming myself. Her ass could and should have been on that plane. No, actually, she should have already confessed to her infidelity and let me move on with my life. Yet somehow, multiple mistakes complicated with multiple lies, with little concern for consequences. And that's my burden to bear now. That's something you do to an enemy, not someone you claim to have ever loved. She gave me some story about being so depressed that weekend while I was away. She knew she was unworthy, even if I didn't. She was punishing herself, even if I didn't know she deserved it. At least that was the way she rationalized it. She knew if I knew, I would view her as a whore and be disgusted with her. I never stopped showing my love, telling her how much I loved her. But she said at some point she realized if I knew the truth, I wouldn't love her. The attention I focused on her didn't matter. It didn't carry the same weight as before because she realized she was unworthy of the attention. And I'd realize that too if I knew about her sleazy rendezvous. She said she called Sabrina for a shoulder to cry on, who convinced her to go out for drinks. According to her, she spent the first part of the night crying and asking what she should do. The bartender bought her a few shots to help her cheer up. She didn't have to say Sabrina nudged her toward some flirting. She found herself kissing the guy in the back alley behind the bar and stopped herself. She went back inside feeling even worse than before because she realized she cheated yet again. More alcohol. Sabrina needed someone to help Natalie inside, so she asked the guy who just had his tongue down my wife's throat. Sabrina left them alone, and clothes came off. I asked her if she once thought of Dylan, if I ever entered her mind as she betrayed us both. She got pissed and told me she never betrayed her son. I let it be known she betrayed not only me and Dylan, but Chloe, our parents, everyone who watched us take our vows, and God above. She betrayed the sanctity of our family and marriage. But I stopped and just shook my head, telling her despite what she'd done to that point, she should have just let me go. I told her I would have looked out for Dylan. She could have whored around with the entire state after we divorced. I told her I would have gladly written her name on bathroom stalls for her, but she didn't. She kept lying. She kept cheating. So much of it disgusted me to hear, like she had an actual strategy. After the first few guys, she didn't want them getting attached to her, as she wasn't going anywhere unless she had to. She wasn't looking for an emotional connection. She called it fishing, getting a guy's number, breaking the ice, giving a little nibble, pulling away, getting him to pursue but on her timetable. When she said she already knew she was beautiful, getting second opinions didn't feel like a bad thing at the time. I just looked at her, shaking my head. At any rate, the bartender is not Chloe's father. That much we are sure of. He was months too early in the game to have been the sperm donor, and she claims they only hooked up that one time. I asked if she could remember the names of the specific guys she was talking to and getting to pursue her. Maybe a couple of first names, but she wouldn't know where to find them was enough to shut that conversation down for the night. Yeah, I wanted more answers, but the details of the BS aren't coming out in one night, and that wasn't what I came there for. She was seated in a chair to be able to prop up her cast on pillows. So, I got down inches from her face and told her she was a pitiful excuse for a human, and I truly believe she has no soul. I told her that her actions have caused unimaginable pain and will continue to do so in the future. But I looked her squarely in the eyes and let her know I was not going to let her hurt my children anymore. I told her point blank that I was the one who got deceived for 6 years. If anyone was going to be getting a little slack for focusing on his needs, it was going to be me. But Natalie, I told her, and I meant every word, petty BS and manipulation are just going to make me loathe her even more. We weren't getting back together ever. I was disgusted for her to even touch me. Loyalty wasn't even in her vocabulary. But father or not, I was going to be loyal to Chloe. I was going to protect her as much as I could. And if I end up having to protect her from her mother's lies, manipulations, and deceit, so be it. I told her Nadia has friends that would love a new BMW for getting her declared an unfit mother. I went there. It was a threat, and I meant every damn word. I told her if she had things to say, she could say them to my face. Getting Dylan or Chloe to relay things their mother said was not happening ever again. Chloe was to know little to nothing about any details of our divorce, and for right now, paternity. But when the time came to tell her, I would be the one who would break that news. It would be me who got to explain how her mother victimized us both. But we survived together. There was no way in hell I was allowing the person who destroyed so much for us both to get to downplay it or blame me. That horrible news wasn't coming anytime soon for her, as far as I planned, until the need arises, and I'll decide when that is. I pointed out she doesn't have a lawyer and let her know the kids would be staying with me for at least the next 2 weeks. She needed some time to reflect on not only the entirety of her betrayal, but her cruel manipulation that will only hurt Chloe. I'd let her know when she'd earned the right to be a mother again. There wasn't much she could do. I had the kids. She's in 2 casts. Let her live with some loneliness. My God, I've made mistakes in my life. On the drive home, I kept wishing somehow I could have just known how things would turn out. This is the biggest struggle of my life. I hope it is the biggest struggle I ever face, but so much has been destroyed. The sham marriage I was living needs to be torn down, ground into dust and the soil tilled with salt. But there is no reason to hurt a little girl who at the moment is blissfully unaware of the battle between her mother and her daddy. I want it to stay that way. Those children cannot see us together. When Natalie and I are in the same room, the entire aura oozes venom. That's beyond toxic for us. I'm not subjecting the little kids to any of it. I will not fight her in front of them, but I swear I will put her in her place and call out the slightest BS. I just feel like every decision I make has 1,000 ramifications. The man-up DNA doesn't matter people need to understand that hurting Chloe is the last thing I want to do, and I have every intention of being not only in her corner, but fighting for her. I don't know how this crap is going to end, but me and that little girl got shafted by the same person. A person that I refused to let damage her the way she damaged me. Not happening. And no motherfucker is coming around my daughter until I allow it. That won't be Natalie's decision either. If I check his background and meet him, I'll make that call if the day ever comes. Until that point, my son Dylan, my daughter Chloe, and I are weathering a storm. I've managed to shield them from what's coming. I will shield them from as much of the shrapnel as I can, but our souls are all going to bleed a time or two before this is all over. This carnage could have been prevented, but once the bomb goes off, it can't be avoided. I am in therapy 2 times per week. Not sure it's helping, but it's early on with the sessions, so I'll give it a few more. I just need to focus on my healing and make the transition in life as seamless as I can for the kids.